Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome all of you back to another Dark Souls 3 OST reaction. Now, all throughout this week, we have talked extensively about the many dragons that have been used in From Software games. I talked a lot about how they represent grandiosity, of terror, of fear, and the sort of the panic that sets in when you are basically defeating at least insofar as like the Dark Souls continuity, the rulers of the old world, they were everlasting. They were immortalized. They were the ones in charge. They were the above, whilst everything else was below. Now, before I know I've talked about Lich Dragon Fortisax before, but before I get to talking about two other types of dragon fights, well, two other dragon bosses, I should say, that appear in Elden Ring. That being both Lich Dragon, Dragon Lord Plasudiax, and one called Baal the Dragon from the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. A lot of things I'm beginning to realize, actually, a lot of dragon fights occur in the DLC, including the topic for today's video. And in my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, this is still probably the best of the lot, in my opinion. Darkeater Midir from the Ringed City DLC. Now, I can't... but here's a quick little thing. I want to talk a little bit about like the story of Midir. Is that Midir, for whatever reason, was incredibly loyal to Lord Gwyn and those to set up the Ring City, to send all humans and all pygmies into pilgrimage inside the Ring City. But it was a trick of the light. The Ring City was not there to protect. It was there to encase and basically imprison people from ever getting out. And even those that were branded the accursed dark sign were sent there not to be rewarded, but to be encased and trapped for all of their efforts. It's the classic, they promised homes fit for heroes. Instead, they delivered heroes fit for homes. And one being to basically keep watch over the Ring City is Darkeater Midir. In fact, it was almost a dragon that was basically designed in many ways to completely stop any overwhelming force from bringing about the Age of Dark into the world. Which would have been really interesting if, let's say, the Ring City occurred in the first game, and so like if you defeat Gwyn, but you would also have to travel all the way to the Ring City, which it's very interesting for what they go for. But I suppose would it make more sense if the Ring City was in the first game than it would be in the third game? Well, you could say that because the whole point of Dark Souls 3 is that the end of the world is coming, and this is almost pretty much the end of the world because of a certain other boss, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But then, of course, there's encountering Midir. Now, the first time you have to fight Midir is that you fight him on a bridge where you have to whittle his health down and then knock him off basically a valley, and you send him deep below. And then you have to... It's entirely optional to fight him later when you travel through like the confines of like the lower half of the Ring City. But then you drop all the way down into a cavern where Midir is sitting there crumpled, possibly dead, but he isn't. He is far from dead. You've just woken him up, and he is ready for a fight. And then he will roar a mighty roar, and the fight begins proper. And this is the sound of that fight. it's once again, Medea's grandiose stature has never once been removed, but it almost sounds like the choir of humanity in its wings, and it slashes even with almost like a very almost a human like aggressive stance, which is very interesting because Medea can like use like the powers of humanity to attack its foes. Well, you in a sense. Did I mention that the very first time I fought Medea, I beat it on the very first go? But that might be for other reasons, because it is very difficult if you don't know what you're doing. But if you know what you're doing, it's still an experience and a half. And then, of course, I can't even get into this again without talking about its second stage. So the first part of the fight is grand. It's splendid even when you just hear this beautiful choir haul out as though humanity is backing this dragon. You feel as if like the very humans, the pygmies even themselves, are chanting for their savior, their divine protector, to keep them safe. And then the second stage is when, instead of basically using fire, Medea uses the powers of humanity, and it's almost like infusing the powers of dark magic by its side. And the choir takes a very more dramatic turn. And I love it whenever, like, it's even done almost like in mid-transition, which is something we've seen in other boss fights, like the Dancing Lion boss fight, as well as when we will get to Slave Knight Gale, because I sort of do go back and forth between whether or not Medea or Gale has the better OST, but, well, it is still kind of Gale, but you've got to listen to this though, man. I didn't want to like interrupt by saying it almost goes into like a transition yet again, but I I can't get over just how exciting all of that is. It's exciting for the reasons why dragons in this series are exciting, because they're not just like any other enemy, and they don't just come up every so often. There's a very noticeable build, like a build up to whenever like a dragon fight actually happens. Anyone who's played through the first game will know that to even fight Calamite, you have to have Hawkeye go shoot him out of the sky. And anyone knows that you have to go to the very end of the Sunken City DLC to fight the Crown of the Slumbering King. You have to go all the way to the very end to fight Sin. And you can only fight the Lich Dragon basically when you get to the end of a character's quest line. So the reward is fighting something dramatic, powerful, and even above a sort of scale that you've never really encountered before. Because yes, even though you could say that like that the pattern for fighting these things becomes predictable, because they'll either like breathe fire, they'll like stomp on you, they can like bite you, but Midir has a lot more going for it because its size and its moveset, and considering that you get to see more of its attacks and more of its special attacks as well when it summons humanity to throw at you, and it has those laser beams. Like, as these games have developed, the movesets for a lot of bosses becomes more defined, and with some very like dragons. And once again, just to conclude this, the dragon fights in From Software games, they evolve to the scale that these things should represent. And when it comes to the power ratio when in dragons in From Software games, it goes up a notch every single time. And I think this was absolutely what they've always envisioned the dragon fight to be like. Unlike things like Sin, I never really encountered that sort of danger really when you fight it. When it comes to like Calamite, you don't really encounter that sort of. It probably should be even grander than that. They were sort of going in the direction for like maybe Calamite, but this is the pinnacle of it. Almost as if you were fighting the last dragon, which he very may well be. But with all that being said and done, I hope all of you guys have enjoyed this reaction video to the OST for Darkeater Midir. One of, personally, my favourite fight in the whole of Dark Souls 3. But do I think he's better than Gale? I go very back and forth on that. But with all that being said and done, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I cannot wait to see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care and bye-bye for now.